One of the biggest challenges colleges face is keeping alumni connected after graduation. Events, reunions, fundraising, it's a lot to manage. And honestly, most schools are piecing it together with different tools that don't really talk to each other. That's why Alumni Q has built their all-in-one platform just for higher ed. It handles the everyday stuff, emails, giving, membership, directories, and it makes it all work together in one place. No more messy systems. And here's the cool part. If you've ever planned a reunion, you know how chaotic it can get. Alumni Q has something called Signature Events that takes the pain out of big milestones. Think smarter registration, built-in giving, real-time reporting, and even printing name tags on the fly. It's like having an extra teammate who never sleeps. So if your school is ready to simplify alumni engagement and actually strengthen connections, check out alumniq.com and request a demo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for listening to Alumless for April 10th, 2026. This is the Charting a New Course for Advancement edition. I'm Ryan Catherwood. I am joined by CMAC founder and CEO, Chris Marshall. What's going on, man? Good to see you.
How you doing? Good to see you, man.
Happy Friday. It is Friday once again. We are Alumless, and on the show, we talk about alumni and constituent engagement strategies and education advancement with our guests. We are live today, so say hello in the comments where you're dialing in from. We love your questions too. If we can't answer it live, we'll be asking those questions to Chris, myself, and our special guest today, Jim Broschart from the University of Louisville. If you are listening to us by podcast, we appreciate you adding us to your feed, and we are immensely grateful to the folks at Protopia, Alumni Q, Givesy, and our newest sponsor, Richmond Associates, for making this happen. Chris, I know that you are not in the market for a new job, right? I think we've covered that on the show before. But let's just, in a hypothetical, let's say that you were going to take over the vice president of advancement role at a college or university. What's the first thing that you're probably going to do?
The snarky answer is to bring CMAC in right away as a consultant.
That is the snarky answer for sure.
I'm going to bet that when we bring Jim out here, he's going to tell us a version of this, but it's the first 90 to 100 days, you're listening and learning. And some of this you actually do. You're off of the job before you even start. You're doing some of this. You're kind of gathering information about what is and what isn't working. You're getting to know the people. But putting together a 100-day plan is really important, I think, as well. I think getting out to meet key internal stakeholders, not just on the team, but with across campus, but also volunteer leaders. Then I'm going to look and see if there's data, some kind of dashboard that tells me the story that we need to tell. If any of those things, as you go through that checklist, if something's missing, you don't have the data, you don't have a dashboard, you can't tell the story. Those are flags that go up along the way. But if you're getting the right answers, it's going to move you forward. But one of the things I would definitely do is, especially if there were clear areas that were yellow or red flags that came up, is to bring in somebody from the outside to do an assessment. I think it's a really important step to take, is to get external confirmation, validation, but also a roadmap to help rebuild whatever problem area that you may be facing. And I've seen other VPs do this, and I'm curious what Jim is going to talk about, but kind of go one by one through each of the areas to make sure that we're doing it and we're applying best practices. And it takes some time to do that. That could be year or two before a VP gets through all the different program areas. But those would be the first things I would do. But if I had to put a bucket over it all, the very first thing is listening and learning and just taking it all in at what's out there.
Yeah, I remember when I took over in my last role, I spent a lot of time reading old yearbooks, actually. Trying to learn the traditions and the culture and figure out what makes the place special, talking with alumni, faculty, staff, and really just, it's introducing yourself, but it's kind of figuring out the nature of the place.
Yeah, getting underneath it. I took 6 campus tours in admissions when I got to Cornell. I wanted to hear different people talk about it, what they say when they tell the story about it. It's really helpful, though.
Well, so how do you think your background in alumni engagement would sort of influence how you'd tackle the role of VP if you were in this hypothetical?
Yeah, I mean, the expectation would be is that we'd have a contemporary alumni engagement program that's data-driven, that's focused on volunteer communications. If I came upon or took on a VP role where I found a shop that it was event, and engagement equaled event, it's going to be pretty quick identification of a problem area, right? But again, it depends. If you find a place, if you come upon a place and you find a program that is really thinking about it, data-driven, focusing on volunteer engagement, thinking about communications, digital, using AI, all that, it'll be a quick assessment in that area. It's probably the short answer to your question. I'll be able to know pretty quickly.
Yeah, you may not have to hire a third party for the
That one, I think I can
alumni
handle that part.
assessment. You think you probably could. All right, well, let's bring out our special guest today.
Yeah.
Jim Broschart is Vice President for Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement at the University of Louisville. Welcome to the show, Jim. It is so great to have you.
So great to be here, Ryan. Hi, Chris. Great to see you too.
Jim, good to see you.
So Jim, when you first arrived at Louisville and you were doing that initial sort of learn the new place in first 90 days or so, what did you learn that confirmed some of your expectations and what maybe surprised you a little bit about what was going on there?
Yeah, I thought Chris's comments were spot on early on. I almost felt like I could leave because he had really covered
Sorry.
it. You don't need me. No, this is a fairly unique situation at Louisville and a fun one to kind of take on. I knew early on and in the interview process that I was walking into what essentially amounted to a startup. That's a program that had been through, a lot of issues over the last 10 years. It had a ton of turnover, chronically underfunded, dramatically underfunded, and needed help and persistence. I think what I found was a team that was rattled, was tired, and had to kind of learn how to work together again. I think, everything was hard and folks were scrambling because, again, when there aren't enough resources, when there's no leadership,
right,
when there's not a deep degree of faith in the unit itself, you have to rebuild all that, and it takes a toll on the team. What did surprise me, Ryan, was the degree to which I would say were now, because we're doing much better in this regard, under-resourced. I think I felt bad for the team, and I felt bad for them trying to apply best practice and trying to keep their head above water, given the background of the shop. To our credit, president, trustees, and foundation board have chosen to invest, and we're getting the ship going in the right direction here. For me, it's been about 13 months, and we've been able to make some progress.
100-day plan from when you start to 100. The higher up the food chain you go in these positions at institutions, day negative 100, you probably were already starting, right? You were thinking about this during the interview process, right? And what to do before you even arrived there. I'm assuming there was some of that work for you.
There was, but I honestly, Chris, I expected to have a better feel going in. I think in this specific scenario, I had to be here for a little while before I could really understand deeply what was going on. I think in 9 out of 10 cases, I think that would be the case where as you're ramping up, you're getting the information. I think this went beyond, strategy and talent and things like that. And it kind of I had to kind of get in to see really at the ground level what needed to be worked on.
Yeah, cultural, and then a leadership with steady hand kind of thing, right?
A lot of culture and climate stuff,
Yep.
A lot of talent stuff. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, talk a little bit about that, Jim. Some of the first inputs that you were looking at as you tried to assess the health of the advancement operation there. And then where did you feel the greatest urgency to act as soon as you kind of were able to assess those things?
I'm not sure I can answer this without laughing. Where was the greatest urgency? All of the above.
Okay. All right.
Leadership and management 101, prioritize, pick your spots, focus. I felt this compunction to do everything at once, and you really can't. But what I came down to was you cannot move an organization forward unless it has the capacity to move forward. So I had to look at and really advocate for organizational capacity, and that comes down to funding. It comes down to org structure, and it comes down to leadership. So I had to do a lot of advocacy around the university. I had to teach people about what a decent alumni and philanthropy shop looks like, what its capabilities should be, what they should expect, and at the same time, I had to teach them that this costs money. To your point, Chris, we brought in one of the big name consultants to do a campaign readiness assessment. That was a 6-month process, and that turned out to be a turning point for us because the manner in which it was done gave a lot of credibility to my bluster.
Probably said, "You're not ready," and listen to Jim is probably what it reports.
Spot on. Spot on. You're
Yep.
absolutely right. But you ask about the inputs, Ryan. I mean, look, we
Yeah.
talked about budget, but how are we staffed? What is the connectivity, throughout the university? Are we being responsive to the deans? Are we serving them well? Are we connected? Are we working in sync? What is the major gift volume? What is the volume of transformational gifts? What level of experience do we have at certain key positions? Who can mentor, who can coach, who needs mentoring and coaching, what is the leadership environment like? All those things kind of came into play for me.
There's had to be a balance between things you knew right away that had to change, and then things that you wanted. Maybe there's some traditions or some cultural things that you didn't want to mess with. How did you make the decision? Was it just a gut? Was there data combination?
Yeah, one of the things I'm still working on is, the whole concept of you grow what you measure. We're still working on the measurement piece and building the infrastructure and the discipline to, we can get information really well, but disseminating it and making it available and packaging it up has been challenging for us. And that's kind of what I'm working on with my team. I think I had to assess individuals in org structure pretty closely and decide where I could get wins and where I could influence ROI. I knew we were in a situation where the university needed to develop confidence in the shop. I'm the new shiny object, so they have a degree of confidence in me.
Right.
So I have to take
Right.
advantage of that to build in places and assess places where I can get ROI. And that's usually the major gifts program. I think we've shifted our kind of focus going into 2027 into early pipeline. We're going to start talking about early pipeline more and assessing that. But first was, how do we get some gift volume started here? How do we start doing some hiring that's going to get the dean's partners, and make ourselves look like a shop that's really more highly functional, if you will.
You're coming. Well, I know your background has multiple, but I'm thinking of like Syracuse that had $1 billion, NC State $2 billion campaign, and you come to Louisville. Where were they in terms of their trajectory towards other campaign totals, and what were some of the things that you brought from those other institutions that you wanted to see here?
So I think it was 2015 or 16. Louisville completed a $1 billion campaign.
So they've done $1 billion. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and they had a run rate at that time. We had a run rate at that time of about $200 million. It was a pretty impressive shop, and they were
Sure.
and it was not a big shop. I mean, it's really impressive. This is a university that has a lot of people care about this university, locally, regionally, and nationally. So there's something to work with here. And again, now we've become so degraded that, we have to build the shop again to get to that level. We're at about, our run rate's about $75 million per year now to include athletics. And we see ourselves in the next 5 years getting up to the mid 100s. And what did I bring from NC State and Syracuse and the like? Well, I had a lot of fun at NC State. I learned a ton, but at the same time, working on some of the nuts and bolts of that program. I learned the value of a really effective, creative, and loose development communications function. The communications team at NC State really inspired donors by taking advantage of a really engaging and fun chancellor and put their leadership in positions to not only inspire donors and our constituents, but to have fun with them and make them feel close to the university. And I witnessed that. I witnessed how you build programs, how you serve the colleges and create partnerships with deans that can work both ways without having that classic tension. And then again, how you turn the corner in an alumni engagement shop to do things in a contemporary way, focus on contemporary philanthropic engagement. Whose phrase is that, Chris? I don't know.
I know we got to go, Ryan, to a break for a second, but let me ask Jim to share one or two what you've learned. 13 months in, you've gone through a cycle culturally about that place. Give us a couple of details of what might be signature components of the core of the ethos of the place.
Yeah, I think at the leadership level here, there's a lot of resolve. It's fun to see the resolve here. It's an organization or an institution that attacks problems. I think speed is valued. You don't always see that in higher ed. It's almost corporate in some ways. I don't mean that in a negative way. I think that's kind of the uniqueness of the University of Louisville, the way it's run right now. There's an emphasis on measurement and accountability. So those are things that we all claim to do, but I think this organization really kind of lives by it. And I think it's going to serve us well going forward. So it's kind of the
Yeah.
unique elements of higher ed culture I see here.
Yeah. I'm sure that was those realities were an attraction for the role. I mean, given your role and your background, and I don't know about you, that's the environment I want to be in to run an advancement shop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
We'll hold that thought, guys. We're going to take a quick break with word from our sponsor. We're going to be right back with Jim Broschart from Louisville. Jim, we've titled the show Charting a New Course, right? And
Yeah.
I know you've had a lot of thoughts on what should happen next and what that actually means, but just talk a little bit about what charting a new course actually means in your mind at Louisville.
First and foremost, Ryan, it means developing a confidence internally within our Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement shop, having us feel really good about ourselves, getting some wins, talking about them, and developing internal and external confidence in us. I think increasing our capacity to raise funds and to engage our alumni is important. That translates to budget. We're accomplishing that. I'm really proud of that. I think if you want to get down to numbers, for us, we've committed to 7% sustained growth year over year. I fully expect that when you have a shop that's going to add 15 frontline fundraisers next year, I would expect that we're going to see years when we exceed 7% annual growth. We're going to have some of those flips, but that's specifically what it means. But it also means integration within the university, becoming indispensable, and aligning ourselves with the various components of the university that we serve and need us to be great in order for them to thrive.
I want you to tell us what those were that you ultimately, you did this whole sort of intake of information. You see all these things going on, but then you have to pick which 2 or 3 you're going to try to tackle out of the gate. I want to know what those were, but I think our listeners would benefit more from hearing from you about how you communicated that and got buy-in to make moves on those areas and sort of built the consensus needed to get your team to make the moves on the things that you felt were most important to change.
Yeah, good point. Well, first, it's that old marketing adage. I have a 35-year-old graduate marketing degree. All I remember from it is repeat, repeat, repeat. So that's
try 6 times until they get it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I watched Brian Sisko at NC State repeat himself a lot, and it worked. But I think more to your point, we have a separate foundation that doesn't have strong formal ties to the university on the org chart. I had to create a sense of urgency within that foundation to get us funded in concert with the university. I developed a 5-year plan, took it to the executive director of the foundation. It was about an 8-page narrative followed by 5 columns on a spreadsheet of a requested investment. And each one was a line item right down to individual regions and individual gift officers and engagement professors. So we could show that we were willing to be accountable and that we could make them a partner with us. So I go to the philanthropy committee meetings now. I talk about where we are, where we plan to be, good, bad, and the ugly. So that's one element is the plan. The other piece is the relationships. I had to make sure that I was, communicating around campus with the VP of research, with the head of our medical school, with the head of our hospital system, and that we were all in sync. And they had a feel for what my vision was so that, they could parrot me and I could parrot them and that we were kind of in sync there. And that all translates to the resources and I was able to get some people advocating to me that might not otherwise.
And the investment sounds incredible. I mean, if you're adding, what I heard, 15 new frontline fundraisers next year, is that correct?
We will add between 10 and 15 frontline fundraisers next year. Some of those are more senior positions, one's an AVP, but they're all folks who are going to contribute to the bottom line. So yeah, we're getting after it, Chris.
Jim,
Love
does that
hearing.
get you back to where you were or ahead of in terms of staff back in the last campaign, the $1 billion campaign?
We'll still be 6 or 8 light, and I think we'll need to go beyond that. One of the issues we face is we've had stewardship issues over the last 10 years just because of our size, and there have been some frustrations in donor land, about the degree to which we've made folks feel wonderful about their giving.
Sure.
I think we'll be fine there. I just think it's going to take a little more input on our end to get to where we want to go.
I imagine, Jim, you had to make a series of decisions kind of early on here, and you've been alluding to a few of them, I think, that really kind of set the tone for your leadership and your tenure there. Talk a little bit about some of those decisions and how it did and set the tone with, some intentionality on your part there.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the tone I was trying to set. I wanted us being Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement, to stop looking backward. And I wanted to acknowledge that, but I want us to focus doggedly forward and make this shift from, oh my gosh, what have we been through, to here's what we're going to do. We're accountable. We're going to be great. I took a very public approach to talking about our issues. I didn't hold anything back. I was very frank publicly. I said the same message to volunteers and board members as I did to staff members and leaders. I was very persistent, back to repetition. My style was just to name it. And, what I've told some people is when I got here and saw the work that needed to be done, I kind of took it personally. And I adopted the attitude of, this has to be fixed and someone's got to fix it, so U of L can have what it deserves. So I kind of just, started telling it like it is and saying, if you want X, you have to do this. We have to do it together. Here's how we're going to do it. And I've actually apologized multiple times for preaching. I get preachy about these things because you just have to keep repeating yourself over and over. But those early decisions, related to how we are going to apply resources, and in what portions of the organization, and who's going to be in what seats.
And as those decisions get made and they see that you're identifying the problem, helping, addressing, and fixing the problem, and then seeing the outcome of the fix, builds trust and belief in your style and where you're trying to take the program. Are you starting to feel that already, or?
Yeah, I think people trust that. To oversimplify, I know what I'm doing.
Right. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to.
But I also think they trust that, my rhetoric is credible and that the moves I make have everyone's best intentions in mind, and that when I'm asking for something, it relates to best practice. It's not a ploy. I think internally within PAE, I'm going to have probably disappointed as many people as I've pleased. And that's the hard part about turning a corner in an organization like this. But that just goes with it, I think.
Do you deploy the Cisco edict of let's go as fast as we can, but as slow as we must?
I can't believe you said that. I love that phrase. I use it all the time, but I really hate that phrase because it implies bureaucracy holding you back. It's true.
Sometimes it's culture that's holding you back, right? That's what I think Brian means by that, really.
This is true.
We want to go fast, but we're going to be held back by other forces that we may not control, right?
That phrase, I have to say, I know we're on timeline here, but when he hired me way back 100 years ago as a frontline fundraiser at Syracuse University, I remember walking out of his office and he said to the talent manager, "Let's move on Jim Broschart as quickly as we can, but as slowly as we must." And I've been hearing that forever with Brian Cisco. I wish you were listening. I really would.
Sounds like a much better, more tactical way of saying we're building the plane while flying, framed in a much better way.
I want to borrow again, because you and I spent some time together. Brian showed up, did his thing, and then left us to do. But in this, what I thought was brilliant, where he identified the pain points, which you were talking about. Here's some of the things. Set up a working group of internal key stakeholders to look at the issue, come back to him with the recommendations, and ultimately say what he would have done. But now it's the consensus of the group to say we should be. You doing that at Louisville?
Yeah, we're doing some of that. I think I've got, that and a couple other, kind of tricks up my sleeve that I want to deploy that I learned from Brian. That's one of them. I'm not doing a lot of it now because I think everything's been a sprint for this first year.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we've been, I think, plugging holes in the dam as we are able to focus a little more strategically and we get a little more experience in place and we have to start attacking things that are more strategic in nature. That's absolutely a method I will use is to, have a group of friends arrive at a necessary decision.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant, and I enjoyed working with you in that process where we tackled a sticky wicket on the alumni engagement side, but with a good outcome. I think it really, 3-4 years later, it's a program that people look at now and say, "Wow, you're
Yeah,
doing
it's
it
a
right."
great outcome.
All right, well, we're going to pick up the conversation with Jim just after the break. But before we leave, I want to mention that our next guest is Chris Bossman, who's the Chief Alumni Relations Officer at the University of Utah. That should be a great show coming up. I think that is the 24th, Friday. Excited. We have a late night recording next week. We got
Yeah.
Margot Powell, Chief Advancement Officer at La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia, back on the calendar for next week to record that one. And we'll have that for our listeners to look forward to. I'm excited because I get to present twice at the CASE APAC conference in
Plug it,
Brisbane,
man.
Australia. I know. So if you are in Australia or you are a listener from that part of the world, we have a few of you. Reach out to me. Let me know if you're going to the CASE APAC conference in Brisbane, and we can spend some time together. Look forward to meet up at one of the receptions or have a fizzy beverage on the Queen Street Mall or something like that. So, well, we'll be back after a quick break. If you're a podcast listener, you can stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment with Jim Broschart, who is VP of Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement at Louisville. And thank you for listening.